catch me howling at the moon.
What's up guys, and welcome back to Park Pros. This is a little bit of a spoiler for an upcoming video, but when I visited Kennywood for the first time in August, I did not have the best day. But by far the best part of my visit was the rides that I got on their Aero/Morgan hypercoaster, Phantom's Revenge. This is a ride that's never really been very high on my list of must-get-to coasters. And to be honest, I didn't really know a whole lot about this coaster going in, besides the fact that it has that really big drop down the hill and that it used to be an Aero and now it's technically a Morgan. And I think the fact that this ride is made by Morgan might be why I never really prioritized getting to it. But unlike the other Morgan hypers, which are pretty stupid and boring, Phantom's Revenge is awesome. In this video, I'll give you guys my thoughts on Phantom's Revenge, which is a ride that I feel like should be borderline illegal just because of how insane it is. We'll dive into all that and more, but first, if you guys are new to the channel, please consider dropping us a sub for more roller coaster and theme park content.
Wow.
On May 10th, 1991, Kennywood opened Steel Phantom, an aerodynamics looping hypercoaster that featured a terrain layout and 4 inversions. When it opened, Steel Phantom was the fastest roller coaster in the world at 80 miles per hour and featured the longest drop of any coaster in the world at 225 feet. Steel Phantom operated for 10 seasons, but gradually became so rough that the park decided to close the ride for good on Labor Day weekend 2000. Instead of removing Steel Phantom altogether, Kennywood decided to bring in Morgan, a manufacturer notorious for building hypercoasters in the late 90s, to make significant modifications to the ride. The most notable of those changes being the 4 inversions being removed, the original layout being significantly modified, and the speed increasing from 80 miles per hour to 85 miles per hour. Kennywood introduced the new Phantom's Revenge to the world on May 19, 2001, and the ride was universally accepted as being a massive upgrade from the previous version of itself. I was able to get 4 rides on Phantom's Revenge during my August 2020 trip to Kennywood. Here are my complete thoughts on the ride.
The Phantom's Revenge is now open, so there's no turning back.
Revenge will be mine.
Let's start with a quick breakdown of Phantom's 3,200 feet of track. You start with a slight turn out of the station and crawl up the ride's 160-foot lift hill, which is the main feature of the ride that remained unchanged during its 2001 conversion. The ride's first drop is a 180-degree right-hand banking turn that takes you into a straightaway and up a hill that banks to the right. From there you dive down into the ride's most iconic element, the 228-foot drop into the ravine. If you're sitting towards the back, you do get a little ejector on this drop, but this is far from the ride's best airtime moment. At the bottom of the drop, you hit the ride's top speed of 85 miles an hour and turn aggressively up into an overbank turn, which provides some of the most insane positive G's I've experienced to date. The ride lets you catch your breath for just a second before throwing you into another overbank turn that also features a little pop of airtime on the way up, which gives you this really weird sensation of a solid ejector moment sandwiched between 2 instances of great positive G's. You finish out the turnaround and fly into 2 twisting ejector hills. It's at this point of the ride that you begin to realize that this coaster is going way faster than it probably should be going. Phantom's Revenge has some of the most ridiculous pacing of any roller coaster I've ever been on. There is no reason that you should be taking these hills at this speed. You hit a left-hand turn and head up into a double down, which again, you're just absolutely thrown over. You do a right-hand helix, head up into 2 final airtime moments, and slam into the brakes while praying that you're not going to fly into the other train sitting back in the station. From the top of the lift to the final brake run, the duration of Phantom's Revenge is only about 50 seconds long. Now this is a pretty average duration for most roller coasters that you'd see, but then you remember that this thing is a freaking hyper coaster. I cannot overemphasize how crazy this ride's pacing is. Once you go down the ride's main drop, you hardly have a chance to even take a breath until you hit the final brakes. Besides the great pacing, let's talk about some of the other stuff that I really like about this ride. First off, I love the trains. The normal Morgan Hyper trains are kind of blocky and the restraints are kind of annoying. Phantom's trains are sleek, lower to the track, and they feature some of the best restraints on any coaster ever. The lap bar is literally just this black pad that looks like a pool noodle. When you're flying over these tiny bunny hop hills at ridiculous speeds, The airtime is so strong and you're so unrestricted by these restraints. There's moments of this ride where it legitimately doesn't feel safe. And I mean that in the best way possible. A lot of times parks will add unnecessary seatbelts on rides that really don't need them, but in the case of Phantom's Revenge, I actually think the ride might be unsafe without them. This coaster has some of the most aggressive airtime you'll find on any ride in the US. Some other random things, the signage for this ride is really great, and I love the corny Phantom figure that you go under to enter the station. I don't know if that's always been there, but it just screams 90s to me. I also love how the station doesn't have air gates. It seems like Kennywood did a good job maintaining a lot of the charm from the original version of the ride. Another thing that floored me about Phantom's Revenge was how smooth the ride is. I would have never guessed that a former Aero coaster retrofitted by Morgan almost 20 years ago would be as glossy smooth as it is today. Phantom is just butter smooth, and I think a lot of that has to do with how comfortable the trains and restraints are. I guess the only thing I would really nitpick about this coaster would be the length. Phantom's Revenge is by no means a traditional hypercoaster, but its 3,200 feet does feel a little short for a hyper. And the fact that it just absolutely hauls through its course kind of underlines how short it is. That being said though, very little of Phantom's layout gets wasted, except for, this part. I think the lack of an extra 1,000 feet or so of track is the only thing holding Phantom's Revenge from being a top 10 or maybe even top 5 coaster in the country. Like, imagine how good this thing would be if it dipped down again and did one more lap in the ravine before that final helix. I rode a lot of really good coasters on my trip, but I don't think any of them surprised me as much as Phantom's Revenge did. I went in expecting it to be a solid coaster, but I never could have imagined that it'd blow me away with such ferocious pacing and aggressive airtime. So let's go ahead and place Phantom's Revenge into a tier. If you guys are new to the channel, here we rank coasters based on this tier list rather than a number scale, and for Phantom's Revenge, I'm going to put it firmly into the elite tier. Very few of the 270 plus coasters I've been on to this point match the incredible pacing and airtime that Phantom has. This is an extremely aggressive coaster, the way it uses its terrain is brilliant, and overall it just has so much character. It's incredible that an almost 20 or 30 year old ride, depending on how you look at it, is still this good. I have to give Kennywood a ton of credit for that. That's it for my thoughts and review of Phantom's Revenge. If you've made it this far, please be sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. As always, thank you for checking out the video, and we'll see you guys next time.